You've been together for 12 years. You have a house. You have 2 kids. You have a joint checking account, a joint savings account, a joint credit card you're still paying off from that kitchen renovation 3 years ago. Your lives are so intertwined that you can't even remember where your money ends and theirs begins. But here's the thing, you haven't been happy for a long time. Maybe it started small. Little arguments about money. Little arguments about how to raise the kids. Little arguments about what to do on the weekends. Little arguments that turned into big silences. Now, you barely talk. You sleep in separate rooms. You coordinate logistics like business partners, not like people who once promised to love each other until death. You've thought about leaving, more than thought about it. You've imagined what it would be like to wake up in your own space. To make decisions without checking with someone else. To not feel that constant, low-grade tension that's been sitting in your chest for years. But then you look at the numbers. The house is worth $600,000. You owe $400,000. Selling would cost $50,000 in realtor fees. You'd walk away with maybe $75,000 each. That's not enough to buy a new place in this market. The kids' college funds are joint. You can't touch them without both signatures. The retirement accounts are joint. The car loans are joint. The credit card debt is joint. And every time you run the math, it comes out the same. Divorce is going to cost you maybe $100,000 in legal fees. Maybe half your net worth. Maybe your credit score. Maybe your kids' stability. So you stay. You tell yourself it's for the kids. You tell yourself it's because you can't afford to leave. You tell yourself that marriage is hard work and you just need to try harder. But here's what nobody tells you. Staying might be costing you more than leaving ever could. And the longer you wait, the more expensive it gets. Hi, what's up? And I spend way too much time thinking about divorce. Which is weird, because I'm not a divorce attorney. I'm not a marriage counselor. I'm just someone who's watched too many people stay in bad relationships because they thought they couldn't afford to leave. And I've watched the math destroy them. If you're someone who's ever wondered whether staying in a difficult marriage is actually the right financial decision, or if you've ever looked at your joint accounts and felt trapped, make sure to hit that subscribe button and give this video a thumbs up if this helps you out. Because what I'm about to say might make some people uncomfortable. It might challenge everything you've been told about marriage and commitment and, for better or for worse. But I promise you, by the end of this video, you're going to understand something that most people never figure out until it's too late. Now, before we dive in, I want to make something clear. Most people think investing is about having a lot of money. The truth? It's about what you keep. I'm building a community at the Frugal Investor newsletter where we strip away the hype and focus on high-impact, low-cost wealth building. Get your copy of the 15-day blueprint for wealth and financial autonomy and join a group of like-minded investors who prioritize long-term gains over short-term trends. Link is in the description. Alright, let's get into it. The sunk cost fallacy. Before we talk about marriage, let's talk about economics. There's a concept called the sunk cost fallacy. And it explains why people stay in bad situations way longer than they should. Here's how it works. You buy a ticket to a movie. You pay $15. You get to the theater, you sit down, and 20 minutes in, you realize the movie is terrible. Boring. Predictable. You hate it. What do? Most people stay. They sit through the whole terrible movie. Why? Because they already paid for the ticket. They don't want to waste the money. They don't want to admit that the $15 is gone. But here's the thing. The $15 is gone either way. You can't get it back. It's a sunk cost. The only question is whether you're going to waste the next 2 hours of your life as well. That's the sunk cost fallacy. Making a bad decision worse because you've already invested in it. Now, let's apply that to marriage. You've been together for 10 years. You've invested time. You've invested energy. You've invested money. You've invested your identity. You've told everyone you know that this is your person. And now, you're unhappy. Maybe the relationship has run its course. Maybe you've grown in different directions. Maybe there's something deeper, infidelity, addiction, abuse. But you're looking at those 10 years of investment, and you're thinking, I can't walk away now. I've already put so much into this. That's the sunk cost fallacy. Those 10 years are gone. You can't get them back. The only question is whether you're going to waste the next 10 years as well. Here's what most people don't realize. The cost of staying isn't just the past. It's the future. Every year you stay in a bad marriage is a year you're not building the life you actually want. Every year you stay is a year you're not healing. Every year you stay is a year you're not finding someone who actually makes you happy. And financially? Every year you stay is a year you're not rebuilding your financial independence. Every year you stay is a year you're not securing your own retirement. Every year you stay is a year your assets are entangled with someone you don't trust. The mathematics of staying. Let's do some math. And I want you to really pay attention here, because this is where it gets painful. Let's say you're 40 years old. You've been married for 15 years. You have a house worth $500,000. You have $200,000 in retirement accounts. You have $50,000 in joint savings. And you have $30,000 in joint credit card debt. Your spouse is a spender. You're a saver. You've been fighting about money for years. Every time you try to save, they spend. Every time you try to invest, they want to take a vacation. You're constantly stressed. You're constantly anxious. You're constantly checking the bank account to see what they've done now. You've thought about leaving, but every time you run the numbers, it looks bad. Legal fees, selling the house, splitting the assets, starting over at 40 with nothing. So you stay. Now, let's run the numbers on what staying actually costs you. Scenario 1. You stay. You continue fighting about money. You continue having your savings drained by their spending. You continue being stressed and anxious. Your retirement contributions are inconsistent because you never know what the joint account is going to look like. Over the next 20 years, you manage to save maybe $500,000. But because you're constantly fighting, because you're constantly having to rebuild after their spending sprees, because you're not investing consistently, that's all you have. You retire at 65. You have $500,000. Your spouse has access to it. You're still fighting about money. You're still stressed. You're still unhappy. Scenario 2. You leave. Let's say you leave at 40. It costs you legal fees, selling the house, splitting the assets. You walk away with about $200,000. You're starting over. But here's the thing. You're starting over alone. You control your own money now. You control your own spending. You control your own investments. You start investing $1,500 a month. Every month. Consistently. No one spending it. No one fighting you about it. At 8% growth, over 25 years, that $1,500 a month becomes about $1.4 million. $1.4 million. That's almost 3 times what you would have had if you'd stayed. And here's the kicker. That money is yours. All yours. You don't have to fight for it. You don't have to protect it. You don't have to worry about someone spending it out from under you. That's the difference between staying and leaving. It's not just about what you lose in the divorce. It's about what you gain in the decades after. The emotional cost. But here's the thing. The math is only half the story. Because the real cost of staying in a bad marriage isn't just financial. It's emotional. It's physical. It's psychological. And those costs have financial consequences too. When you're in a stressful relationship, your decision-making suffers. You make impulsive choices. You avoid hard conversations. You ignore problems until they become crises. You spend money to feel better. Retail therapy, comfort food, vacations to escape. When you're in a stressful relationship, your career suffers. You're distracted. You're exhausted. You're not showing up as your best self. You're not going for that promotion. You're not taking that risk. You're not building that business. When you're in a stressful relationship, your health suffers. And health problems are expensive. The American Psychological Association found that chronic relationship stress increases healthcare costs by about 40%. 40%. That's thousands of dollars a year in medical bills, therapy bills, missed work. So when you're calculating the cost of divorce, you have to calculate the cost of staying too. And that cost is real. It's measurable. And it's usually much higher than people think. The psychology of trap. This is where it gets really interesting. Because there's a reason people stay in bad relationships even when the math says leave. It's not just the sunk cost fallacy. It's something deeper. It's called loss aversion. And it's one of the most powerful forces in human psychology. Here's how it works. Losses hurt about twice as much as gains feel good. If I hand you $100, you feel pretty good. If I take $100 away from you, you feel terrible. The pain of losing is about twice as powerful as the pleasure of gaining. Now apply that to marriage. When you're considering divorce, you're not thinking about what you'll gain. You're thinking about what you'll lose. The house, the kids' stability, the identity of being married, the life you've built. Even if you know, intellectually, that leaving is the right move, your brain is screaming at you to stay. Because the losses feel so much bigger than the gains. And here's the thing that nobody tells you. That feeling of being trapped? That's not a sign that you should stay. That's just your brain being bad at math. That's your evolutionary wiring trying to keep you in the safe, familiar thing, even when the safe, familiar thing is destroying you. The data on divorce and wealth. Let's look at what the data actually says about divorce and wealth. Because this is where most people have it completely backwards. There's a common belief that divorce is financial ruin. And for some people, it is. Especially for people who don't have their own income, or who have been out of the workforce for years, or who are married to someone who controls all the assets. But here's what the research shows. For high-conflict marriages, divorce actually increases financial well-being for both partners. Not just for the one leaving. For both. A study from the University of Chicago tracked thousands of couples over 2 decades. And they found that in high-conflict marriages, the people who divorced saw their household income increase by an average of 30% within 5 years. 30%. Because they weren't fighting anymore. Because they weren't stressed anymore. Because they could actually focus on their careers and their finances instead of managing a toxic relationship. Another study from Ohio State University found that the wealth of divorced women actually increased more than the wealth of married women over a 15-year period. Why? Because they took control of their own finances. They invested. They built careers. They didn't have someone holding them back. Now, I'm not saying divorce is always the right financial move. If you're in a low-conflict marriage that just isn't working, or if you're in a marriage where you're both aligned on money and just struggling with other things, staying might make sense. But if you're in a high-conflict marriage, especially around money, the data is clear. Staying is costing you more than leaving ever could. The threshold questions. So how do you know? How do you know when staying is the right choice and when it's just the sunk cost fallacy? This is where it gets really interesting. Because I've thought about this a lot. And I've come up with a framework that might help. Ask yourself 3 questions. Question 1. Is the conflict about money, or is it about something deeper? If you're fighting about whether to save for retirement or take a vacation, that's a values conflict. And values conflicts can be worked through. You can get a financial planner. You can set up separate accounts. You can find a middle ground. But if you're fighting about control, if your spouse is hiding money, if your spouse is spending money you don't have, if your spouse is sabotaging your financial security, that's not a values conflict. That's a power imbalance. And those are much harder to fix. Question 2. Is the situation improving, staying the same, or getting worse? If you're working on things and they're getting better, that's one thing. But if you've been fighting about the same issues for years and nothing has changed, that's not going to change. 5 more years isn't going to fix it. 10 more years isn't going to fix it. The only thing that changes is the amount of time you've wasted. Question 3. What would you tell your best friend? If your best friend came to you and described their marriage, what would you tell them? Would you tell them to stay? Or would you tell them to leave? We're always better at seeing the truth in other people's lives than we are in our own. So take yourself out of the equation. Look at your situation like you're looking at a friend's situation. What would you tell them? Let me tell you about someone I know. Let's call her Lisa. Lisa got married when she was 24. Her husband was a good guy. They had fun together. But over time, she started to notice patterns. He was bad with money. Really bad. He'd spend money they didn't have on things they didn't need. He'd hide credit card bills. He'd lie about how much he spent. Lisa was the opposite. She was a saver. She was a planner. She wanted to buy a house. She wanted to retire early. She wanted security. They fought about money constantly. For years. Every month. Every paycheck. Every credit card statement. The same fight, over and over. Lisa thought about leaving, but she looked at the numbers. They had a house. They had kids. They had joint accounts. Leaving would be a disaster. So she stayed. She stayed for 15 years. 15 years of fighting. 15 years of hiding credit card statements. 15 years of watching her savings get drained by his spending. 15 years of stress. 15 years of anxiety. 15 years of sleepless nights. When she finally left, she was 45. The divorce cost her legal fees, half the house, half the retirement accounts, half of everything she'd spent 15 years trying to protect. She started over with about $100,000. At 45. But here's what happened. In the 5 years after the divorce, Lisa rebuilt her life. She controlled her own money. She invested consistently. She got a promotion at work because she wasn't constantly stressed and distracted. She started a side business. Within 5 years, she had more money than she'd ever had in the marriage. Within 10 years, she had more than double. Within 15 years, she retired. At 60. With $1 million. She told me once, I wasted 15 years thinking I couldn't afford to leave. The truth is, I couldn't afford to stay. The hidden costs now. Let's talk about something that doesn't get discussed enough. The hidden costs of staying in a bad marriage. There's the cost to your career. When you're in a high-conflict relationship, you're not performing at your best. You're distracted. You're exhausted. You're not networking. You're not going for that promotion. You're not starting that business. The opportunity cost of the stress is enormous. There's the cost to your health. Chronic stress leads to high blood pressure, heart disease, diabetes, depression. The CDC estimates that chronic stress costs Americans about $300 billion a year in healthcare costs and lost productivity. And relationship stress is one of the biggest contributors. There's the cost to your kids. Yes, divorce is hard on kids. But staying in a high-conflict marriage is also hard on kids. The research is actually very clear on this. Kids do better in low-conflict single-parent homes than they do in high-conflict two-parent homes. They learn better conflict resolution skills. They have better mental health outcomes. They're less likely to repeat the patterns they grew up with. When you stay in a bad marriage, for the kids, you're not protecting them. You're modeling that conflict is normal. That unhappiness is normal. That staying in a situation that's destroying you is normal. Is that what you want them to learn? The action plan. Alright, so let's say you're in this situation. Or maybe you're not, but you know someone who is. What do you actually do? Here's the action plan. Step 1. Separate your finances. If you're in a high-conflict marriage, the first step is financial independence. Open your own bank account. At a different bank. Move your direct deposit. Start building your own savings. This isn't about hiding money. This is about having options. You can't make a clear decision about your future if you don't have the resources to act on it. Step 2. Get clear on the numbers. You need to know exactly what you have and what you owe. Joint assets. Joint debts. Your income. Their income. What you'd walk away with if you left. What you'd need to rebuild. This is hard. This is uncomfortable. But you can't make a rational decision without the data. So get the data. Step 3. Talk to a professional. Don't make this decision alone. Talk to a divorce attorney. Not to file, just to understand your options. Talk to a financial planner who specializes in divorce. Understand the tax implications. Understand the long-term math. Most people make this decision based on fear and speculation. Don't be most people. Get real information. Talk to experts. Step 4. Run the 2 scenarios. Run the numbers on staying. Not just the financial numbers. The emotional numbers. The health numbers. The career numbers. What does your life look like in 5 years if you stay? In 10 years? In 20 years? Then run the numbers on leaving. What does it cost now? What do you gain later? What does your life look like in 5 years? In 10 years? In 20 years? Be honest. Be realistic. And pay attention to which scenario feels like freedom. Step 5. Make the decision from strength, not fear. Whatever you decide, make it from a place of strength. Not from fear of being alone. Not from fear of what people will think. Not from fear of the unknown. If you stay, stay because you believe things can get better. Because you're working on it together. Because the marriage is worth saving. If you leave, leave because you believe your future is worth more than your past. Because you deserve to be happy. Because you deserve to be financially secure. But don't stay just because you're afraid of the cost. That's the sunk cost fallacy. And it's costing you more than you know. The freedom number. I want to end with a concept I call the freedom number. Your freedom number is the amount of money you need to have in your own name, in your own account, that you control, to feel like you have options. To feel like you can leave if you need to. To feel like you're not trapped. For some people, it's $5,000. Enough to rent an apartment and survive for a few months while they figure things out. For some people, it's $20,000. Enough to cover legal fees and a deposit on a new place. For some people, it's $100,000. Enough to buy a small place of their own and start over. Whatever your number is, build it. Even if you never use it. Even if you stay in your marriage forever. Build that safety net. Build those options. Build that freedom. Because here's the truth that nobody tells you. The most important financial decision you'll ever make isn't about stocks or bonds or real estate. It's about who you share your life with. And if you're sharing your life with someone who is destroying your financial future, the best investment you can make is getting out. I really hope this video brought you some value today. If it did, Comment more down below. I'm reading through those to decide what topics to cover next, so definitely let me know if you want more of this. Look, I know this is a hard topic. I know some of you watching this are in exactly the situation I've been describing. And I know it's scary to think about leaving. It's scary to think about the cost. It's scary to think about starting over. But here's what I want you to remember. You are not the person you were 10 years ago. You are not the person you were 5 years ago. You are not even the person you were yesterday. You are someone who can make different choices. You are someone who can build a different future. You are someone who deserves to be happy. You are someone who deserves to be financially secure. You are someone who deserves to be free. The sunk cost fallacy says stay because you've already invested so much. But that's not logic. That's fear dressed up as logic. The truth is, the best time to leave was 10 years ago. The second best time is today. Because every day you stay in a situation that's destroying you is a day you're not building the life you actually want. And that life? It's waiting for you. It's just on the other side of the decision you've been too afraid to make. Don't let the cost of leaving keep you from the cost of staying. Because the cost of staying? It's everything. Alright, I'll see you in the next one.